Now that we've got the database set up, we need to add the tables. And remember that we have all the details that we need for this that we did when we were doing our physical database design. This gives us information about data types and constraints, the column names, and the table names, lots of information here. I've made a copy of mine so that I can work with it for this next step, which is adding the tables. So one of the important things about adding tables is it must be in order. So we need to check all of the foreign keys, and the table with the primary key must be entered first. Okay, so here we have a foreign key right here, and it's user ID, which refers to the user column. So the user table must be created before I can create the phone number. Well, that's going to work because those are in order. Now if I move down here, the next table has user ID, which is fine because I have the user table there, but then it has section number, and the foreign key for section number comes from section, which shows up here after. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the order of these so that they're in order. Now if I look at section, section can't actually be next because it has 3 foreign keys. So instructor is going to be a foreign key into the user table, so that one's okay. Course is going to be a foreign key into the course table, so that has to come before section. And location is a foreign key into the location table, so that has to become before. So course doesn't have any foreign keys, so I can copy it up here. So I'm going to start by moving these tables around so that they're in the order that I can change them. So I'm going to drag the course table and move it up here. Remember, phone number was okay, so I'm going to put it underneath there. And that's the course, and it has no foreign keys. Location was the other one, and it doesn't have any foreign keys. So I'm going to also drag this up here. And put it up right underneath the course. All right, location is there. And now section, remember, is the one that I needed to get, and we've got the user tables there, the course tables there, and the location is there. So I can move this one up next. All right, and now we're ready for this registration because the foreign key to user works and the foreign key to the section number works. It's up there. All right, prerequisite needs the course ID, which is up there in the course, so that's fine. And prerequisite course ID is also a course ID from the course table. So now we've got them in the order that we can add them. Next is to remove any computed values that will not be stored. Remember that we made a couple decisions, right? So it was decided that in this database, neither the GPA nor the class rank would be actually stored in the database. So we'll want to go in and actually remove both of those because we won't be entering them. Okay, now we are ready to create tables. Oh, almost. We need to now move to that we're using to the current database. Remember, we set to use master, and now we want to go ahead and go inside the database. So we're going to say use student U, and notice it's showing up now, so that makes it easy to get to. So we want to use student U and execute that so that we're actually using it. I'm going to copy this and put it in my plain text editor as well. All right, so there we're using student U. Now, the next step is to actually do the create tables. And we're going to use the create table command, and then we'll list all the columns and details and add constraints. So let's go ahead with the first one, which is create table, and its user was the name of the table. And now there are several details we have to add, and we're going to do these inside parentheses. And we're going to do each column. So the first column is user ID, and that column was a char, and you can just keep going back and looking, right, because we have it already set up. So we can just go ahead and look. User ID, it's a char 9, and it's a primary key. That primary key is a constraint that we will add. I'm going to add it at the end. So there's the char 9. Now notice that we didn't have it set with null or not null. So when it's blank, that means it's not null, and we want to go ahead and add that here. We don't get to leave it off, even though we could when we were doing our table. We want to be sure and add it. The next one is first name. And it is an N varchar. And we made it big enough for 35. And again, this one is not null. And we just keep adding all these details. I'm going to go ahead and add a few. So now I've listed all of the columns with their data types and whether they're allowed to be null or not null. And I got all of that information directly from the details that were written up in the physical database design. Now I have one problem going on here, and that is that I've got a curly red underline. This is showing me an error, and it says that it's a syntax error. And this one is, everything looks fine, but the problem is actually that user is a keyword. So here we run into the first conflict that we're going to have between our physical database and the actual implementation. If you go and look at the keywords in SQL Server, it's quite a long list of keywords, and you can go find, it keeps going back to this, and everything looks fine as far as syntax, but there's that user as a keyword. So when I get here, I'm trying to use that as a name when it's actually a SQL Server keyword. So I'm simply going to append a 1 on there and have that get rid of that problem of it being a keyword. All right, so everything is there as far as the data types and null or not null. Now I can add any default values or identities. So if I go back here and I look in this user table, I don't excuse me, I don't have any identities, but I do have a default value for the user type. So on user type, I can finish here by going default, and the default was simply a capital S. And so that's the default value. So there I've done the first part of the adding the column details. Even though we're done with adding column details, we are not done with creating the table. There are still constraints to be added.